Mosaic, a daily news program from Worldlink TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Welcome. This evening, Iraqi television broadcasted footage of Saddam Hussein in the midst of an Iraqi crowd in the streets of Baghdad. Saddam toured a number of buildings that were bombed by the coalition forces. This is the Iraqi president's first appearance in a public place since the beginning of the war. Meanwhile, Iraqi President Saddam Hussein called the Iraqis to jihad and to fight anyone who dares to approach Baghdad. The Iraqi president appeared on Iraqi television, giving his third speech since the beginning of the war.
Hit the enemy hard with the strength of your faith. Hit them if they approach you. You, my loved ones, the people of Baghdad and Iraq, the faithful and magnificent people. If God is willing, they will be defeated and damned.
The Iraqi Minister of Information, Mohammed Saeed al-Sahaf, threatened the coalition forces who entered Saddam's international airport. He said that tonight they will face an unusual attack. The coalition's command is counting on the outcomes of the airport battle in the Iraqi capital, believing that victory is now attainable.
The coalition forces changed the name of Saddam Hussein Airport to its original name, Baghdad's International Airport. This may be an indication that the coalition's next battle will be the one for the Iraqi capital. Those who watched the airport battle noticed that the United States and British forces continue to reinforce their troops, which have been deployed there, supplied with more equipment and ammunition. Soldiers there are coming and searching the area, especially the runways, looking for any pockets of Iraqi resistance. The military commanders who fought the airport battle perceived it as the key to victory.
My message to the people in Baghdad is that this is the first step.
The attacking forces had faced fierce resistance from the Iraqi soldiers since the Iraqis were able to wage several attacks before they were overwhelmed. The United States forces said that they blocked 2 Iraqi defense tank attacks, destroying 5 tanks and capturing a number of soldiers. An official Allied statement was released declaring the coalition's control of the airport. However, gunshots can still be heard from some of the pockets of resistance. The coalition's command sees that the airport battle as a huge moral victory to the American and British soldiers. They are now propagating for a close victory.
Now joining us from Baghdad, our correspondent Jaber Abeid. Jaber, you just arrived to Baghdad. The first question is, of course you were not able to arrive through Saddam's airport since there is fighting there. Can you tell us how was your journey to Baghdad? Did you cross from Jordan? And what was the journey like, starting from getting into your car up to arriving to this point?
مينيرفا بداية دعيني أبتدأ الحديث
Minerva, I would like to start by saying that we from Abu Dhabi Television pledged to provide our viewers with breaking news from its source. Accordingly, it was very important for everyone who came with me to Baghdad to be at the source of this breaking news. We have traveled approximately 800 kilometers departing from Amman until we arrived to Baghdad.
كما ذكرت قبل قليل وكل مشاهداتنا مينيرفا في الطريق.
Minerva, as you mentioned earlier and as reports from the last few days demonstrated, there are only Iraqi-controlled areas. We did not see United States or British soldiers.
أو جنود بريطانيين. تم تحويل خط سيرنا عندما وصلنا إلى عمرية الفلوجة.
We were rerouted once we arrived to Amaria at Al Falaja. They told us that we had to take another route since United States forces have been deployed along the highway.
وكانت القوات العراقية تتعامل مع تلك القوات فيما يبدو تمهيدا لما ذكر.
The Iraqi Minister of Information Muhammad Saeed al-Sahaf said during a news conference that the Iraqi forces' strategic plan is to separate some of the United States forces deployed in different areas in eastern, western and southern Iraq.
كما ذكر هو وقال في مؤتمره الصحفي.
نعم. جابر يعني أنت سبق لك أن ذهبت
Yes, Jabir, you have visited Baghdad before and now you are visiting it again at a time where preparations are underway for what is called the decisive battle. What is the difference between the first visit and this visit? And can you describe the general situation in Baghdad?
لشخص يدخل الآن إلى بغداد.
Minerva, honestly, this is for the record. I'm not afraid of anyone or being a hypocrite. When we entered Baghdad today, we noticed that it was completely different. It is a 180 degrees difference from what we saw in the first 2 weeks of the holy month of Ramadan. I was here in Baghdad last Ramadan. Let me describe the situation as follows. There are more than 10 million eyes and ears watching and observing the steps of the United States and British forces. Honestly, I really don't know how the Americans and British will achieve their goal of entering Baghdad. As I have witnessed with my own eyes, it is going to be almost impossible.
ضربا من المستحيل.
U.S. forces were exchanging heavy artillery and gunfire with Iraqi forces shortly after U.S. forces said they had seized around 80% of the sprawling civilian and military airport complex, just some 15 kilometers from the center of the capital. Iraqi forces were shelling U.S. positions within the airport. A senior U.S. military spokesman said U.S. forces are deployed on the tarmac of Baghdad airport but have not seized the airport buildings. And U.S. Central Command in Qatar said the British forces spokesman said there were still pockets of resistance around the airport. On another front, a senior U.S. military spokesman claimed that some 2,500 Iraqi troops have surrendered to U.S. Marines advancing north of Baghdad from the town of Al-Qut, some 170 kilometers southeast of the capital. And fighting continued to rage in Basra as British forces maintained they made their deepest incursions on Thursday into the city.
U.S. troops exchanged heavy gunfire and artillery fire with Iraqi troops in and around Baghdad's Saddam International Airport on Friday after the U.S.-led forces said they took control of large swaths of the airport. Iraqi forces were shelling U.S. positions within the airport while plumes of smoke were seen rising close to a series of hangars. The smoke appeared to be the result of U.S. artillery fire, indicating that Iraqis were still holding out in the hangars. U.S. planes were also continuing to bombard the airport amid Iraqi anti-aircraft fire. At the U.S. Central Command in Qatar, the British forces spokesman said there were still pockets of resistance around the airport. Reuters correspondent later reported that U.S. forces repelled an Iraqi tank's counterattack and destroyed 5 of the Iraqi tanks and a number of armored vehicles. Fighting began shortly after the U.S. forces claimed Thursday they had seized around 80% of the civilian and military airport complex located at some 20 kilometers southwest of Baghdad. Iraqi forces were shelling U.S. positions within the airport. Meanwhile, Colonel Will Grimsley, commander of the 3rd Infantry Division's 1st Brigade, said U.S. forces have occupied the VIP terminal at the airport. However, Major John Altman of the same brigade and division told an AFP correspondent on the ground that the airport will not be secure until troops have gone to every room of every building. He was speaking with heavy machine gun fire in the background, indicating fighting was still going on. Gunshots were heard from inside, and it was not clear how many Iraqi troops remained in the airport. On the other hand, Iraqi officials said that Iraqi forces seized 5 tanks and a helicopter, imprisoning and killing their crews in a battle near the airport. And for the first time in the 2-week-old war, artillery fire was heard Thursday on the southern outskirts of Baghdad. On Thursday night, most of the capital was plunged into total darkness following a power outage. The British Daily Telegraph said on Friday that U.S. forces were responsible for the power outage and that these forces took advantage of the darkness and managed to deploy hundreds of U.S. and British special forces supported by units of Anglo-American intelligence. As fighting continued in different parts of southern Iraq, Iraqi forces said in a statement late on Thursday that it shot down 2 U.S. Apache helicopters in 2 southern Iraqi regions, Al-Muthanna and the holy city of Karbala, and that the Iraqi television would show footage of the seized equipment, giving no further information. Meanwhile, on the Basra front, fighting continued to rage as British forces are said to have made little progress towards capturing Basra, advancing only 1 kilometer into the southern half of the city. Officials said British forces had no immediate plans to launch an all-out offensive on the city, where an estimated 1,000 Iraqi fighters were still holding out. And Iraqi Information Minister Mohammad Saeed al-Sahaf has denied that British forces were closing in on the center and said Basra is in good shape. In the meantime, British troops from the 7th Armored Brigade said they discovered a villa that local people say belongs to Ali Hassan al-Majid, the man said to be the commander of the southern region. Soldiers found the villa deserted and local people said they did not know where al-Majid had gone. As fighting goes in anticipation of a major battle in Baghdad, the U.S. casualty toll continued to mount. According to the Pentagon, the war has left 54 U.S. troops dead, 41 of them in combat, as well as 7 known prisoners of war and 16 missing. But the fate remained uncertain of 6 soldiers aboard an Army Black Hawk helicopter that crashed Wednesday in central Iraq. CENTCOM said the accident produced casualties, but they were not included in Thursday's toll. CENTCOM also reported a fresh incident of friendly fire early Friday when a U.S. serviceman had been mistaken for an Iraqi soldier and shot dead by his own troops in central Iraq.
On the northern front of Iraq, the American Airborne Division is facing Iraqi missiles. According to news reports, American airplanes are landing in airports in the Kurdish part of Iraq. Meanwhile, a wave of bombardments targeted the area that divides Kurdistan from Iraqi positions, and the city of Mosul is being bombarded for the 4th time in one day.
In Al-Mosul, the sirens were turned off one time through the night, although it was bombarded twice, and anti-aircraft missiles were heard in some areas simultaneously. The Allied forces targeted the positions of Iraqi forces along the front lines between Kalak village in the independent part of Kurdistan and northern Iraq. On the other hand, Iraq confirmed that it has launched tens of missiles against the American soldiers in the area. In the Kurdish part of Iraq, 100 American soldiers and 2 helicopters were seen early in the morning in Al-Harir airport located in the Kurdish-controlled area. One soldier confirmed that they have landed in the area during the night. Meanwhile, the Kurdish fighters from the Kurdish Democratic Party were seen helping the American soldiers. The American soldiers belong to the 173rd Airborne Division based in Italy. They have started digging secured positions around the airport. An official from the American Central Command in Qatar said, "The soldiers are working to facilitate air support operations for the coming infantry forces. Al-Harir Airport, which is about 75 kilometers away from Erbil, was built by Saddam Hussein 20 years ago. It has not been used since the enforcement of the no-fly zone in this area of Iraq. An American official said that things are going as planned and that they have transported all the necessary equipment. He also said they are digging in to secure the area. Other equipment, such as military vehicles and tanks, will also be transported. More than 1,000 American soldiers were parachuted in Bashur in northeast Erbil as the first big installment of American forces in this part of the country. The objective is to open a northern front that is supposed to be limited to Kirkuk and Al-Mosul to prevent the Iraqis from concentrating their defense on the southern front where the Allied forces are advancing. At one point, the U.S. viewed opening a northern front as an important element of the war, but that did not work because Ankara refused to let 62,000 American soldiers pass through its territories to the north of Iraq. This forced war planners to stop sending the Texas-based 4th Infantry Division to Turkey, even though it was equipped with the most advanced equipment. Instead, it will be heading toward the Gulf in the next few days. Moreover, hundreds of American soldiers are working in the north to plan the invasion of northern Iraq, to control the oil fields and advance south towards Baghdad, in addition to controlling the tense situation between the Kurds and the Turks in the area.
We have a member of the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan, Dr. Faoud Massoum. Dr. Faoud, good evening.
Good evening.
Before I ask you about your political opinion, can you tell us what is happening on the ground? We hear rumors about the presence of American airborne forces and airplanes. We also hear that the Kurdish forces have captured positions that were previously held by Iraqis. Do you know anything new?
There are some American specialists that landed in helicopters in some areas. That is a fact. What is new is the withdrawal of the Iraqi forces from an area called Beni Makan, which oversees Shamsham city. The Iraqi forces withdrew about 20 kilometers toward Kirkuk and Karaganhel and Al-Rashih.
Doctor, how do you view the Iraqi withdrawal? Is it a tactical withdrawal, or did the attacks cause it?
During the last 3 or 4 days, the Iraqi forces were hit by U.S. missiles. It appears that they have decided to withdraw to Kirkuk to strengthen the defense lines there.
Dr. Faoud, we hear rumors about bombarding the area that separates you from the Iraqi forces. Has the northern front opened yet?
So far, there are no resources to open a front in the area. The American presence is very small, mostly specialists, not soldiers. Some of them are armed with light armaments. We do not have the necessary resources to open a front in the north.
Dr. Faoud, one last question. Are you no longer worried about the possible Turkish interference in the north, or do you think that the danger is still there?
The Turks have occupation plans and they are trying to achieve them. We have decided not to allow Turkey to enter because we do not see any justification or legal precedent. There is nothing that threatens the Turkish security, and thus there is no need for it to intervene.
Dr. Faoud Massoum, member of the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan, thank you very much.
UN staff went back into Iraq to assess conditions in their first working visit since UN Secretary General Kofi Annan withdrew them shortly before war began. A joint team from the World Food Programme, the UN Children's Fund, the UN Office for the Humanitarian Coordinator for Iraq, and UN security experts toured the southern Iraqi port of Qasr. During the one-day trip, the experts were expected to assess the state of food and water supplies, sanitation, electricity, and health in the town and nearby areas. The United Nations says most families in the southern city of Basra are believed to have enough food to last until the end of April. But fighting in and around Iraq's second biggest city has limited water, electricity, and medical supplies, forcing many civilians to flee. UNICEF said it sent water into southern Iraq from Kuwait for the third day running to the towns of Safwan, Al-Zubayr, and Qasr, along with emergency health kits. The International Committee of the Red Cross said its first 2 trucks carrying humanitarian relief had left Kuwait for 4 hospitals in Basra. Thousands of Jordanians across the country took to the streets after Friday prayers to express anger at the US-led war on Iraq and solidarity with the Iraqi people. Thousands of people went in a march that began outside Al-Husseini Mosque in central Amman. They held banners denouncing the US-British aggression on Iraq and demanded a swift halt to hostilities. They also hailed the defiance and sacrifices of Iraqi people in defending their country. Opposition parties also organized a similar protest in which thousands of people took part. The demonstrators urged a unified Arab stance against the war on Iraq. The Islamic Acting Front party held en masse rallies in Amman and Irbil to denounce the US-British invasion of Iraq. They also voiced their strong support for the Iraqi fierce resistance to the unjust war devastating their country. Similar anti-war protests also took place in Salt City, Al-Baqa refugee camp, and Al-Aqaba. In the Bahraini capital, Manama, 3,000 demonstrators chanting "Death to America, Death to Israel" have taken to the streets. They waved Iraqi flags and carried placards denouncing the US-British war on Iraq. Elsewhere in the world, thousands of Muslims held demonstrations across India. Protesters marched through the streets of the Indian capital New Delhi, the northern city of Jammu and Kashmir, and the eastern Calcutta city. Israeli forces wounded 7 refugee camp residents in the central Gaza Strip. Israeli military sources said troops exchanged fire with Palestinians and 1 soldier was wounded. The clashes came as Israeli forces were hunting a Hamas top activist who was captured after emptying the refugee camp of most of its men. Anwar al-Layyan, head of Islamic Jihad's military wing in the Palestinian-ruled town of Tulkarem, surrendered at his hideout in the local refugee camp. The Israeli army claimed he and 4 others, who were also arrested, were planning a car bombing. It said troops blew up an explosives workshop in the town. The tactic drew criticism from Palestinian officials and human rights groups. The Israeli human rights group B'Tselem called the Tulkarem tactic unacceptable, irrespective of its justification or duration.
Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support provided by Henry and Virgilia Dakin.